While I may not be a huge fan of the phrase boomer shooter, I definitely love this throwback trend. After decades of first-person shooters inspired by Half-Life, Halo, and of course Call of Duty, I think it's safe to say that the fast-paced fragfests are back, thanks in large part to the 2016 Doom reboot kicking the door in and reminding everybody just how exciting this genre can be. If you're a console gamer patiently waiting for Doom the Dark Ages, then I recommend you sharpen your teeth on this just-released port of Turbo Overkill, a speedy action game that mixes and matches the best elements from sci-fi stories like Blade Runner, RoboCop, and Cyberpunk 2077. Come and see why this futuristic first-person shooter was worth the wait when I review Turbo Overkill from Apogee Entertainment. If you're a big fan of the emerging boomer shooter trend and recognize the name Turbo Overkill, then you might be wondering why exactly I'm covering this game now. After all, it originally debuted on PC back in 2022. Now, a full 3 years later, this debut release from Trigger Happy Interactive is finally making its way to PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, and Switch. And I'm happy to say that it was definitely worth the wait. You play Johnny Turbo, a half-man, half-metal action hero with a chainsaw for a leg. When he returns to his hometown of Paradise, Johnny makes a troubling discovery. You see, everybody seems to be possessed by a rogue AI named Sin. Hoping to make some money, our hero takes on the insurmountable task of defeating that evil AI and its army of augmented soldiers. But watch out, because Johnny isn't alone, as rival bounty hunters are looking to snatch that prize from right under his robotic nose. Alright, while it's not the most complicated story, it does do a good job of setting up a bunch of exciting levels full of futuristic bad guys to kill in all sorts of gory ways. This is a true return to the old school days of monster closets and labyrinthian level designs, complete with a copious amount of health and shield objects to grab. It's a speedy game where there are enemies around every corner, rarely giving you a chance to relax or even breathe. Beyond the obvious science fiction influences, you're going to see a lot of Doom, Quake, and Duke Nukem in Turbo Overkill. Now, one thing that this game does extremely well is it embraces the futuristic world, making it a big part of the gameplay. Beyond the whole chainsaw leg, Johnny can also double jump and even dash multiple times in the air. Right off the bat, that makes him feel like a superhero. You're going to be zipping through the air and running on walls in order to gain the upper hand in nearly every fight. And all of that's before you earn the ability to literally slow down time. You see, this is the kind of game that's constantly throwing new moves and techniques at the player. On top of dashing through the air and slowing down time, you'll also be able to buy and equip different augments for our hero. These are upgrades and perks that can change the action in some pretty dramatic ways, such as adding more parkour moves, or explosive new attacks, or becoming a magnet for both items and money. You can equip up to 11 of these augments in your arms, legs, and cranium, but you can't install all of them at once. That means that you're going to have to make some tough decisions about how you want to upgrade Johnny. Of course, it helps that the levels take full advantage of Johnny's many abilities. There's a nice mix of corridors and wide open environments, giving you plenty of ways to incorporate the different weapons and special moves. I found that even when I did hit a wall and died repeatedly, I was still having a lot of fun trying out the different strategies, hoping that something would work. This isn't the type of game where you can just use the same gun or ability in every single situation, and I had so much fun using the different augments to give myself a surprising amount of options. And honestly, I feel like I barely scratched the surface of what is possible. I think it's going to be so much fun watching speedrunners tackle this game. I also really liked how varied the stages are. Some levels are incredibly straightforward, while others are massive, requiring the player to complete subquests just to get to the end. And let me tell you, just when you think the game has run out of tricks, you're going to end up flying your air car around or finding a giant mech on top of a flying train. Between the story, the gameplay, and the level designs, Turbo Overkill isn't afraid to shake things up, something that will definitely keep players on their toes. Although you've definitely seen a lot of these ideas before, the game does do an excellent job of world building. A lot of it is done visually, though there are audio logs, conversations, and flashbacks that'll help to fill in some of the gaps. I really like the look of Paradise, a futuristic city that definitely feels like it was pulled straight out of Blade Runner. Sure, it starts out feeling a bit derivative, but when the story picks up in the second half, the developers do some really interesting things with the city and the level designs. The game ends up being a lot more cinematic than I was expecting, and I was there for every second of it. Unfortunately, that does bring us to the game's biggest issue. It can sometimes feel like the developers bit off more than they can chew. This is a lengthy game that tries to do a lot of different things, but that ambition comes at the expense of the visuals. Look, I'm sure that many will have no problem overlooking the rough and outdated graphics thanks to the speed and the fact that it is, by design, a throwback title. That said, there are times when I wish that the game was a bit more polished. Don't expect it to look as good as a modern first-person shooter, or even that Doom reboot from 2016. Turbo Overkill has a low-budget look that it just can't shake, no matter how impressive the scope is. Of course, there are a few other issues that pop up, such as how there's just a little bit too much first-person platforming. This is frustrating because it's not as precise as it should be, and it's almost always over some sort of bottomless pit. I also wish that the gun selection was as futuristic as the rest of the game, though the various upgrades do help to make the traditional shotgun and pistols a little bit more interesting. And while I'm nitpicking, I should probably point out that switching between the guns is a little finicky using the controller, an issue that I run into a lot of times when reviewing first-person shooters on home consoles. The good news is that once you've mastered your superhuman moves and find your favorite augments, you're gonna forget all about the dated visuals and the boring arsenal of weapons. No matter if you're jumping on flying cars or using your chainsaw leg to take out Sin's cyberpunk army, fans of over-the-top first-person shooters will find a lot to love about Turbo Overkill. And with a surprisingly long story full of twists and turns, this boomer shooter should keep even the most hardened fans satisfied right up to when that new Doom game comes out. While Turbo Overkill may not revolutionize the boomer shooter genre, you won't mind because it's so much fun! This is a fast-paced action game with a compelling science fiction setting and all kinds of futuristic moves and abilities to master. It's also ambitious, constantly going out of its way to shake up the level designs and even the gameplay. What it lacks in visual polish, it more than makes up for with exciting set pieces and moments that are so over the top that they belong in a big-budget Hollywood movie. More than anything else, Turbo Overkill is a fantastic reminder of what made these classic first-person shooters so great to begin with. Hey, thanks for watching my review. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new reviews and features almost every day. Now, here's the question I have for you. What's your favorite boomer shooter? Honestly, I can't wait to see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we're going to be back on Friday with a brand new episode of Review Crew. Will that involve the Nintendo Switch Online? Maybe. We'll see. While you wait to find out, I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then.